Hi, it's Robbin McMahon here. I'm the host of Parenting Our Future. And if you're listening to this podcast, I want to thank you so much for being here. I also want you to know that I am a former angry mom. I used to yell and rage and threaten and punish my kids because I wasn't getting the cooperation or the behavior that I felt I should be getting. And I struggled for many years not knowing how to change or knowing what to do differently. It wasn't until I found the world of peaceful parenting that I learned why my kids acted the way they did, and also why I was so angry and triggered. I was able to heal my anger and leave my triggers behind so that I could focus on being the calm and confident parent I always expected myself to be. I can tell you that feeling connected to your kids is the best feeling in the world. My two boys are teenagers now, and we have a strong relationship that is rooted in deep connection. And where there is connection, there's cooperation. Parenting is the most important job we do, but it's the hardest job we do. And we do it without understanding the fundamentals of the way our kids grow and develop. And we do it without knowing the way their brains work or what their behavior is actually really telling us. So it's no wonder it's so hard. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, this is harder than I thought it would be. And that's where I come in. I can help you and I can support you so that you can have the cooperation and enjoy being a parent. You can book a free call with me on my website, parentingforconnection.com. And if you want to download my free guide, How to Turn a No into Cooperation, go to triggerfreeparents.com. I really hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. Hi, everybody. It's Robbin here. Welcome back to another episode of Parenting Our Future. I'm so happy to have you here. I kind of have a superstar with me today, and I think you're going to learn a lot from her. She's incredible. Natasha Hastings is here, and she's an Olympian. She is a track superstar. I'm going to tell you all about her, and then we're going to dive into some questions because I just think this is such an important topic that all parents need to hear and listen to and really think about the way we think about our kids' sports. I've talked about it before, and we're talking about it now in sort of a different way. So, Natasha, welcome. Natasha attended the University of South Carolina, where she majored in exercise science. She won both the 400 meters indoor and outdoor NCAA championships her junior year, setting collegiate records in the process. And she finished her junior year undefeated in her competitions. After turning pro in 2007, Natasha made her first USA Olympic track and field team in 2008 as a member of the gold-winning 4x400 meters relay team. Additionally, not to brag, Natasha made every USA World Championship team since becoming a professional sprinter. And to know her a little bit more personally and her professional life, Natasha vlogs on her YouTube channel, which we have a link to in the show notes, by the way. And ultimately, as she nears retirement, she's a mom of a 2-year-old, by the way, she is continuing to strive for excellence. Get this. She's currently pursuing a graduate degree in clinical psychology with the intention to help close the gap between mental health and the pressures put on athletes. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you here. And, I grew up loving track and field, watching track and field. I told you before we hit record that my dad was really a track and field superstar in Canada here as he was growing up. And in his province he was one of the fastest men in running in Canada for a time. And so I was always forced to watch track and field and have grown to love it. And I always loved the Summer Olympics. And so how did you get your start? What sparked you to start in track and field?
It's funny because it's actually a very similar story. Both of my parents ran track. In fact, you're in Canada. I'm in the States.
Yes.
My parents migrated from the West Indies to the States, particularly New York, on track scholarships.
Oh.
So same thing. I was forced to watch track. I remember there being pictures of my parents running track around the house. My dad was a coach at their alma mater, New York Tech. And then it was the 96 Olympic Games that was the year that I actually joined a team. But, you know, like having the understanding of like, oh, this is something that I do. I could one day grow up and be an Olympian. And it was right at home in the United States. So yeah, it was kind of, I always say, I think I was born into it. But yeah, same thing where I just grew up watching the sport, going to practice with my dad, seeing pictures, and then I somehow was, you know, born with the talent. Oh, my mom also made the 84 Olympic team for Trinidad. So yeah, like
that's pretty cool. Yeah. So
yeah.
it's in your DNA. It's in my DNA. However, it skipped a generation because I can't run at all. Like
Yeah,
at all.
I have a younger sibling and it skipped him too. So it happens.
Oh my gosh, good. Okay. So you first started in your first team. You said the 96 Olympics is when you kind of, and where that was, that in Atlanta?
Atlanta, yep.
Yeah. Okay. I do remember those Olympics too. I love it. And so where, like, at what point did this become serious? And this kind of is going to lead me into sort of talking about parenting. And so tell me how it became serious. Who recognized your talent? You know, was it obvious or yeah, did you, yeah. How did that go?
It was not obvious. I'm going to try to like shorten the story without leaving out too many details.
Okay.
Because my mom always used to take me to this track meet that it's still going on in New York City called the Colgate Women's Games. It's a series of meets that's held over 6 weeks and anyone can sign up. Anyone can go run. You don't have to be a part of a team or anything. And so my mom took me to run. And then she took me, this was like the second or third year that I'd competed in the meet. So it wasn't like, you know, I'd been exposed. Anyway, a friend of hers introduced us to Coach London, Sean London, who ended up coaching me from that moment to the time I went off to college, introduced us. And as he's introducing us, Coach London says, oh my goodness, I saw you running. And I thought to myself, she reminds me a lot of Joanne Gardner. Joanne Gardner is my mother. It happened that he ran at the same time in Trinidad as my mom did. And so it was just like totally fate of like,
yeah.
And when I say it was not obvious, I was a hot mess. Like I was flat-footed. It was indoors, so you could hear my feet hitting the track like all throughout the building. It was awful. How he saw talent through that, I don't know. But literally, I went to practice for about a month with him and he like cleaned up my form. That was all he did at first, was like clean up my form and of course practice or whatever. And I just started winning. And it was a matter of like him cleaning up my form and like having the patience with me to do that. Because I always say too that I was a spoiled brat, but sports, like that was where I got my discipline from.
Oh, awesome.
But yeah, that's pretty much where it started from. I don't know how he saw through the hot mess, but funny story. And
that is like serendipity. I love it. It's this like, what I mean, just meant to be, right? Let's be honest, just meant to be. And those sort of people come into our lives and come and go for these kind of reasons. So I love that. And so then because of your parents and your mom, you know, and this connection with your coach, how did you feel pressure from them? Was there an expectation, even an unspoken expectation, that you were going to run and be a runner?
I love this question because no.
Really? Okay, tell me more.
And it's one of the things that when I go out into the communities and I do the work that I do, I attribute a lot of my long-term success to my mom. And I say that because I was 9 years old when I joined that team. I'm 35 and I'm still doing it.
Wow.
And I'm still doing it because number one, I still enjoy it. And number two, you know, my mom had the mindset that like, A, you've got to want this more than anything. Me wanting it for you is not going to do anything for you. B, I also had the parent that she stayed out of it. Like my relationship with Coach London was our coach athlete relationship. At the time, I didn't have the greatest relationship with my dad. I no longer have a relationship with my dad. So he was like my surrogate father. But when it was time for my mom to step in, she stepped in, i.e., at 10 years old, and she comes to practice and I have 10 400s, and she's like, who? Get your stuff. Let's go. You're not doing this workout. You're not going to burn my daughter out. And I think in today's culture, we see a lot of like overwork, like grind. But like my mom had the wherewithal very early on that like, you're a growing kid. That's just unnecessary. I can tell you now as a professional, I don't do 10 400s as a workout now, as a full grown adult. So I do attribute a lot of that to my mom. And I also take it a step further. And I say that I had some teammates that honestly had more raw talent than I did, but their parents were the ones who made it less fun for them. And their parents were the ones why we lost them from the sport, because they didn't enjoy it. They overworked them, and, they burnt out by the time it was time for us to go off to college. And they just made it not fun, or they would be like over competitive. Whereas my mom was just like, I mean, to this day, like, are you having fun? Okay. As long as you're still having fun, let's go do it. Otherwise, we don't have to do this.
Wow. I think that is so important to hear. It's about the fun, right? The cream is going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
Is the way I really look at it. Like the great kids who are playing whatever sport they're playing are going to be recognized. And if we put that extra pressure on them, make them do all of the practices. I mean, I see kids. So as a Canadian, I am a stereotypical hockey mother. So you can just laugh at me now. And I see the parents whose kids are on multiple teams, who are, doing private lessons, power skating, playing 365 days a year.
Yeah.
No breaks. Many of them no other sports. Some of them may play other sports, and they have the closed door, car lectures. This is everything you did wrong. This is what you should have done. I mean, we have, and it happens everywhere. But parents getting into fights in the stands with each other,
Amen.
Parents ruining the lives of these referees who are kids too. It's embarrassing and it's shocking, and the behavior is outrageous. And at the end of the day, when our kids get old enough to be able to speak up for themselves, because when they're young, it's harder to speak up and against your parents, but they will eventually.
Yep.
And if you've used this power over your kids in order to control them throughout their growing years, when they become teenagers, they're going to be pretty quick to say, you know what, I don't want this anymore. And screw you, mom or dad, because I'm done. I'm not doing this. Right. And it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have an even unique situation. My mom's middle name is Natasha.
Oh my gosh.
And so, I tell people all the time, like, I feel like I'm finishing what my mom didn't get to, because opportunities were a lot different back then in '84 for women in sports now.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. It has to be what your kid wants, you know what I mean? And the idea that, we would push our kids so much, sometimes I feel like I'm kind of talking out of the side of my neck, right? Because I've had this conversation with my now coach recently where he's like, let's just go out there and have fun. And I'm like, but let's be clear, to me, having fun is winning, right? But the desire to win and the desire to work hard has to come from the child. So all that other, like, there's just some things that when you look at LeBron James, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, there's something in them that desire is not coachable. That's just what they want. And because they want it, they're willing to work towards it. And you find that, like, your parents, and, we can talk about the intentions of it all, want you to be great and all this, but at the end of the day, if that fire is not from within, you can't coach that. You can't want it more for them than they do themselves. And I really just think you end up doing a disservice to your kids when you are that aggressive with it. Now, it shall be interesting with me and my 2-year-old to see how this plays out.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I do think that it's important that you allow your kids to find their own thing. And I will say the one thing that I will do differently with my son, which is the only regret that I have about myself, is you talk about specializing very early on. I did specialize very early on. I even specialized in my event very early on. And I tried basketball at one point and I wasn't good at it. So I went right back to what I knew I was good at. But I do think it's important and a good thing for kids to try different sports. And I think, find what works for you, but also in trying those different sports, a lot of those skills are transferable. Yes. We're finding too that, if you give your kids a little bit more time to specialize, sometimes specializing too early, we're seeing so many, and I'm hearing like young kids, 11 and 12, having like meniscus surgery and all these kinds of things. And it's like, I think some of it is just, we're specializing too soon. We're putting a lot of pressure on these growing bodies that give them a chance to blossom into who they are and let their bodies develop and change and all those things. So that's my only regret, that I do wish that I might have tried some other sports. And I'm going to try to push my son to try everything before he says, this is the one. But yeah.
Well, and look, I want to say that it is very unique that your mom was the way that she was, because even as you say, I kind of finished what she started, it would be hard not to have expectations of you and want this more for you. And the fact that she had that sort of philosophy that it has to be fun. And for you to say more than once just now, even that kids have to want it more. I think like it bears repeating again. Like it's powerful. It has to be driven by our kids, not by our sense of lack or living vicariously through our kids. So you're really lucky that your mom, your namesake, was able to honor you and your path, even though it sounds like it wasn't perfect. But it was still a winning path for you, for sure. Right.
Totally,
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So you just mentioned Simone Biles. And so let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind, because I want to talk about the mental health part of it, because I don't think you can talk about it one without the other. And we're just so much more now aware of and accepting of the mental health piece. And so when you heard that she had to take a break during the most recent Olympics for mental health reasons, and you studying psychology and going to be working in this field, what was your take on that?
It's nuanced. I'm going to tell you, it's
okay.
nuanced.
It's complicated. It's messy. People in life is messy, right? So yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Because I don't want to give the cookie cutter answer, right? Because first and foremost, my response was good for her, right? And then when you take it a step further and look at exactly what it is that she does, she not only put her mental health first, but she put her health first. And another conversation that's big for me is mental health is health. But she does something that if she went out there and made the wrong move, she could have physically put herself in harm's way. And so I applaud her in taking that step to say, hey, you guys might not get it. I know that I'm probably letting my teammates down, but for me, this is what I've got to do. The flip side of it, that I am still what I call a dog. And I just talked about, like, there's certain things in these athletes that you can't coach, that there's a part of me that's like, but those are the things that we've been taught to push through to accomplish. And then when you've accomplished all of these things after pushing through that, that's what makes it even sweeter, right? But then you sit back and you're like, but look at you perpetuating what has been normalized and what we have just accepted. And now you're working to change that in working in mental health, in moving into the space of mental health, where let's be honest, in the Black communities and in the athletic communities. It's taboo. We don't talk about it. A lot of instances, we didn't even have the language to identify some of the things that we were experiencing as, I don't even want to say as athletes, as people, you know, because I think that's lost, that, you know, you see these athletes on TV and literally I make the comparison to superheroes. You know, we're doing things that 99.9% of the population of the world, and I know I sound narcissistic to say this, can't fathom doing, you know what I mean? Like, we do have to have a level of narcissism to do and believe in the things that we do, right? But then there does come a point where you got to step back and be like, I am a person, today's not the day, and I'm taking this day, and I'm sorry that it's at the Olympics. I'm sorry that you can't fathom that I would take this mental health day at this time, but I've got to do it. So it's nuanced, because I'm not going to lie. There was a part of me that was like, girl, but you couldn't get out there and do it. But then there was also the human part of me that was like, no, I get it. I get what that pressure feels like to go out. And I can say I get it, but I'm not Simone Biles, who is the face of gymnastics. So that's an entire different level of pressure that I just can't imagine, that like you have all of this mental anguish on your shoulders to go out there and perform. And I know what it feels like to feel that pressure, but that pressure to me is like 10 times more being a Simone Biles. So
yeah, I mean, she's almost a household name, right? I mean, most people know her. Yeah. And the thing is, the issue that she was having, wasn't it sort of like a vertigo-esque condition where she couldn't tell the floor from the
spatial
ceiling?
Awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. There was something. Yeah. So she you really could have hurt herself. Yeah. And it's true. Like, I'm sorry it's at the Olympics, but I have to do this. Right. And I appreciate your answer, because I don't think it's as simple as good for her or she should have pushed through. Right. Like, I think it's we all have our own opinions and our own, you know, thoughts about it. And that's what conversation is all about. And I think we have to open up a conversation about it. Right.
I think the biggest lesson, I know you want to move on, but the biggest lesson that I've learned in moving into mental health and accepting things is that 1, 2, 3, 4 things can be true all at the same time. It can all be true at the same time. It doesn't mean that 1 is any less than 2 or 3 is any less than 4. It's all true at the same time. What works best for you in that moment and how you have to handle it, that's what's important. But life isn't black and white.
No. And she's the one that needs that would have to live with a broken neck if it came to that, right? Like, let's be honest, that's her life and her future. And I'm sure that was an excruciating decision, but I thought it was important to ask you about that. Now, okay, your life must be crazy. I just want to point that out because you're going to school. You still compete, and you're a mom of a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So what's happening? How do you do that?
I don't know. I literally, before you hit record, I was telling you I just drove to Jacksonville. I have a track meet tomorrow. I'm in summer school right now. I know this is going to air some time away, but I'm in class right now.
Yeah.
I'm training. I'm a full-time single mom. It's so funny because my son is with my mom, and I asked her at the last minute, I thought he was going to be with his dad this weekend, and I was like, hey, do you think you can keep him? And she's like, sure, but like, can we come down to Jacksonville? Or she was like trying to figure out how to get down to Jacksonville. I was like, no, actually, he's not allowed in Jacksonville this weekend. Like, I'm just at that point where, and until you become a parent, there are some things that like we have our opinions about, our thoughts about, but I'm just like, I'm going to work, but also I love my kid dearly, but I need a break from him.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
So, and it's just 2 days. I'm going to be right back up the road Sunday morning, but
And we
Yeah,
have to normalize that. We have to normalize, I need a break and I actually can put myself first. And that's not selfish. It's not anything to be judged or feel ashamed of. Because if you're not okay, how can you be okay for him? There's no
literally,
way. Yeah.
literally.
No, I will stand on any soapbox any day and talk about why rest and a break is the most vital thing that we can do
Yeah.
as parents.
Even modeling that for your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
A few of my friends have like pointed that out to me, that, I feel like life is crazy with everything that I'm doing. And,
Yeah.
they're like, but you're setting a good example for him that,
Mhm.
number one, I believe that I'm raising my son to one day leave me. One day you
Yeah.
need to go off and live your life. So you know what that means? In the meantime, I've got to continue to take care of me, because when you're gone, then what? So he's a focal part of my life. He's very important to me. I never knew a love like this, but I can't leave myself behind. And so it's a tug of war. It's a guilt trip that I know every mom and dad out there goes through, but you do have to be intentional about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it like we just said, it's messy, it's complicated, right? And modeling it is so important. I love that you said that. And I think that you can add to that too and talk in the language of like feelings and needs. Like mommy is feeling really tired right now. And I do need to have a nap. I do need to go and, sit quietly, and it's not about you, my love. I love you. This is just what mommy needs. And normalizing that is really important. Normalizing that you also have a life and things happen in your life that are important to you. I think that's okay too, right? They aren't they are the center of our universe, but they're not the center of our universe, right? Like we also need to make sure we have something. And the fact that you just said, like, there's got to be something left over when he's moved on and away. Wow, that is exactly right. I love it. I love that you said that. That's so great.
Easier said than done, but I'm
Of
practicing.
course.
Every day is a new day to try again.
I think that every day is different too, right? One day it's like, yeah, I've nailed it. The next day I failed it. The next day I nailed it,
And that is why I hate the word balance as well.
Okay.
That like there's some days that I go to bed and I was like, oh, I was an awesome mom today. And then there's some days that I go to bed and I was like, I really did not have enough patience with my 2-year-old, who I get the question like, are you going through the terrible twos? And I'm like, I don't know that I believe in terrible twos. He's a 2-year-old that's figuring the world out, and I have to be patient with him to let him figure his world and his space out. But I'm human, and there are some days that I'm like, let's just put the clothes on and go to bed. But I'm trying this gentle parenting, like, oh yes, son, let's do this, and you can put your pants on yourself, all the things. But some days it's not the best. So some days I'm a great mom, some days I'm a great student, some days I'm a great track athlete, but not every day are they great days. And I lean into that and I allow myself that, I'm human.
Yeah. Well, it's so refreshing to hear that, because at the end of the day, we're all flawed. We all make mistakes. We all have bad days. And it's really the story we tell ourselves about our failures.
And because the author up here is the best one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact is that it is what it is, whether you tell yourself a good story or a bad story about it, right? It doesn't change the fact. And you get to decide if it's good or bad or neutral, right? It just is. Like today, I didn't have as much patience. Okay, I can move on from that, right? I'm not perfect. Like I am far from perfect. And I do my best every day. It doesn't mean that my best is as good as yesterday or, that sort of thing. And look, a 2-year-old is very demanding. A 2-year-old is a little scientist. I like that you just said, and you can tell that you're in psychology and that you're walking really the talk, because the fact is he developmentally is a little scientist. He is learning that, oh, when mommy goes left, I can go right. And that
You mean you don't want to chase me right now?
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to wear pants though. And you're telling me to wear pants? I choose not to, right? Like they're just learning about the world around them. And it is around the age of 2. And I told you this before, that they start to really upset us and we feel controlled, manipulated, we feel powerless. And that's when we start to punish. That's when we start to worry that, are you going to be like this forever? And it's really just temporary behavior that we just need to understand is developmentally appropriate. And the fact that our kids don't come to us with fully grown brains, understanding the way the brain works is key to understanding what the heck is going on with your kids. Right. So, I mean, I'm pretty passionate about that too. So there's a lot of soapboxes that I can stand on and talk about a lot of different things, but
I am too. I'm learning, and it's a journey, but I really want him to have this space to even as a 2-year-old, and I joke and I'm like, one day this is going to come back and bite me, but I want him to have a voice, so I try to give him choices, and that's part of, building him up to, because we do get into the control and I need you to do this, this, and that. And it's like, but do you want to be controlled? Do you want to be told that, I saw a Instagram story the other day, and it was like, how do you feel if someone just takes your smartphone away from you and you're in the middle of doing an email? You're going to be upset, right? So this notion about sharing, like, let's talk about how we teach our children to share. And I was like, man, that mind frame, it's true. Like, they're little human beings that don't have a fully developed brain in order to express the same exact feeling that you probably have if someone did that to you.
Yeah. And it shows a complete lack of respect for them as a human. And I think respect is a core human right.
And another modeled behavior.
Yes. And their emotions are as real to them as ours are to us. Right. And the more you control your child, the more counter will kicks in, which is the will to do the opposite of what you say when I feel controlled and manipulated. Right. So we want to alleviate that too, so that parenting is easier as well. So there's a lot. And, counter will come into play as parents are pressuring their kids to succeed, pressuring their kids to perform and achieve. And so what would you say to parents, like from your experience, even seeing some of your teammates and friends leave the sport because of the pressure? Where is there, and I know you don't like this word, but what is the right balance? What do we as parents do? I'm sorry to say the B word, but how do we navigate that? We see potential. We see that they could go far. Are we blind, or do we just say, hey, you have this great potential, but it's up to you whether or not you take it all the way? Or, I don't know. What's the best way?
That's another new one.
Okay, good. I love it.
There's no black and white to it, because again, we can see all the potential in the world in our kids, but if they don't see it,
they don't want it.
And they don't want it. And even as I say, if they don't see it, that is a tough one, because I'd be lying if I didn't say there weren't times in my career that I didn't see it in myself, but my mom somehow spoke it into me for me to see it in myself. And I think that that's important too. You've got to be the one that speaks the life into your child, but you've also got to know and have the wherewithal to sit back and say, okay, how much of this is what I want versus what they want? And sometimes, even giving children the space to, I think it's kind of what you said too, the counter will, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to back off. Like, what I'm doing here is not working. And maybe that backing off might be the thing that brings them back to that potential that you see within them, but it's really like speaking to that fire in your child. Another thing that I think is huge that I'm kind of struggling now with is love languages. We all have them. And when I say I'm struggling with it, my son is clearly physical touch. And that is a boundary that we're working on, that I love that you're so loving and so willing to express it, but mommy's love language is not physical touch. So I love you, but right now mommy's touched out, but I think it's so important for you to learn the language that your child needs to be spoken to in. Because I think that's where we bump heads a lot of times too. Like love languages is not just romantic relationships, you know.
I
You,
completely
you
agree.
you have to know how to speak to your friends, your colleagues, you know, all of your loved ones. So I think, and it's something that I'm exploring as I move into, you know, performance coaching of like what motivates athletes. You know, every athlete has different motivations, you know. So how do you speak to that motivation within that athlete, that child? So nothing is black and white.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, you speak to the desires of your child and, you know, try to take your own expectations and wants off of your child. And I mean, you know, you hear it sometimes too. If you have confidence in the things that you've instilled in me, you should have confidence in the choices then that I'm going to make. So, you know,
you are one wise mama, Natasha. You really are. You really are.
I hope it pays off.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt that it will. And I think the other piece of this, you know, like what you said, just echoing what you said, to really put our stuff aside, right? We had our chance. Let our kids be kids. And I think what this really invites us to do is to listen to our kids, really deeply listen, and know that even if they're going to go to the show, even if they're going to become an elite athlete, at the end of the day, it's the journey, not the destination of the Olympics or the NHL or MLB or wherever it is they're going, because within that journey itself are so many beautiful lessons, important lessons. And, you know, I share this all the time. I have two teenage boys, both of whom have played hockey, both of whom have stopped playing hockey. One stopped because he had a tragic accident and obliterated his knee on a trampoline. He did a backflip and he had a patella tendon avulsion fracture, just to be super technical. And it's pretty hard to get back to your baseline from that. And he's very strong-willed and doesn't want to do physio or anything like that. So there comes a point where we were like wanting him to get back to hockey, and you know, and so I've been there too, like, okay, I want this for you, but I can't want it more than you. And so we really had to just say, look, if you don't really want to play, then you don't play. And look, my husband was a fantastic hockey player, was their coach, still plays hockey now, you know, all that stuff. So there was a lot there. So I really understand where you're coming from, even though I am not a sports person, unfortunately. But I would have, you know, it's funny. Well, it's funny because I told you that I love track and field. Well, I love track and field because that's what my dad loved. And when it came to sports, I wanted to play all the sports, but guess what sport I played? Track and field. And I don't know if you can sort of say it like that, but I did track and field and I sucked at it. So my parents didn't really listen to what I wanted to do, but I would have played hockey. I wanted to hike. I wanted to bike. I wanted to do all of the things, but I never had the opportunity to, because my dad just saw track and field as the only option. And I was terrible at it. Like I remember coming in last at a track meet, and like how embarrassing for me at the time as this little kid. And I'm sure my dad was like, oh geez, I don't know who that kid is, you know? So yeah, I get it.
You know, what's interesting is you say that though, because I said earlier, like, I want Liam to try all the things. And, you know, when I say to people, I don't want him to run track and I don't want him to play football. I don't speak about his dad, but his dad is a Super Bowl champ. Like, so he has two high achieving parents in sports. And it's very, very important to me. He's also a junior. He's named after his dad, but we call him Liam because I wanted him to have his own thing. And so I know it's going to be a challenge for me. And what's even more of a challenge for me, I don't know how this is going to play out, but earlier I said, fun for me is winning. But I know that if I was coming in dead last my mom was in the stadium screaming for me no matter
Aw,
what.
yeah.
And you said something earlier about it being the journey and
Mm,
the process. And it's really true. And I say that because, you know, you read my biography earlier. I have a ton of accolades. Those
you
moments
do.
are so fleeting. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's great to have those moments and to be in those
Mhm.
moments, but it happens so quickly. And then you're just on to the next. But the journey to get there, you know,
Mm.
and it's cliche because, you know, you talk about the injuries, you talk about the sacrifices that my mom as a single mom had to make for me to get here and all the things. But that really was, you know, the lessons that you learn, the memories that you carry with you. And then you get to this big goal or whatever it is, and it happens, and then you move on to the next and you're trying to achieve the next. And so, you know, whatever it is that he picks, I hope it's not football. I hope it's not track.
But you're going to support him if he does,
I
obviously.
want to be, yes, if he chooses either of them, I will be in the stands screaming till that kingdom come. And if he's
Yes.
not great at either of those things, or, you know, he's sitting on the bench or whatever it is, again, whatever it is that you enjoy, whatever
Mm.
it is that, you know, you maybe you have camaraderie with your teammates or whatever it is, I hope to be there in the front row screaming for you to have fun,
Mm.
because in all of those things there's still lessons for you to take on to whatever it is that you do go on to do. You know,
Yeah.
he's going to be in sports. If it's not sports, he better be in the glee club.
Yeah.
He's got to be active and a well-round. That much I'm going to put out
Yeah.
there, that like I have that expectation, right? Play an instrument, whatever. I'll be front row to support you, but I want you to find that passion for yourself, and whatever
Mm.
that journey is, yeah,
Oh, I
enjoy that
love it.
journey and that process.
I really love it. I love everything that you're saying. And the fact that, yeah, I don't really want you to run track or play football, but I will be there to support you if that is what
Totally.
you choose. Right. And it's not up to us. Like it just isn't. They come well, I want to say preloaded. Like my little guy, well, my oldest son, when he was really little, as soon as he got his skates and his first like bit of gear, he wanted to sleep with it. Like he loved it so much. And it was in a way that we'd never seen before. In fact, he would say to us, "My name's not Parker." We introduced him actually to one of the Canucks, Vancouver Canucks, one of the coaches, just with the affiliation that I had with my old career. We were in a box anyway. And he said, "No, I'm not Parker, I'm Edler." And Edler was one of the players on the team. And he just said
Uh-oh.
that was his name. And so we had to like explain. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's so funny." So like, that wasn't something we taught. That was just in him.
Mhm.
So, and it's undeniable. And I think that there is a something that I keep hearing: insistent, persistent, and consistent, right? When they are that way about their passion, that's of course when you take notice. Like, and if they're insistent, persistent, and consistent about being a programmer or being an athlete or being
Artist, a musician,
yeah,
whatever.
gardening, whatever it is, like we have no choice but to listen. So it's about honoring who they are, not who you expect them to be. And I just want to say thank you to you for the work that you're going to be doing, because you're really going to help a lot of athletes, because really the talent itself is just one part of it. The mental health, the mental wellness, the mental toughness that you need is really the biggest part. Would you agree?
Oh my goodness, totally. And thank you for that. I think it's two parts. It's the mental toughness to compete at a high level or just to compete, but also the humanness first.
Yeah.
Gotta take care of you. I also say, you know, sports psychology helped me a lot, but it also
Mm.
helped me see some of the things in my personal life outside of like what's showing up here in sport, that's showing up in my regular life that I need to work through. And,
Mm.
you know, so we're humans first, and that's who I want to see first before we
Mm.
get into the how you perform out on the field.
Mm. Wow. Well, that's so great. And I've loved talking to you. You gave me chills when you said those moments of achievement are fleeting, and it really is about the journey. I just have to say that really resonated with me. I absolutely love it. And so people can really find out more about you and follow you. So you are on all the places. You are on Instagram, Natasha Hastings, at Natasha Hastings. You have your YouTube channel. So we just need to look for you at Natasha Hastings to find you anywhere. And your website is natashahastings.com. So
yes, I kept everything simple. Natasha Hastings.
Yeah. I've got like websites that are all different, so I wish I had just kept it simple myself. You're so smart to do that, I have to say. And anything that you want to leave the listeners with who are listening, who have a child that maybe has potential or who doesn't have potential, anything that you want to leave them with, I'd love to hear it.
Just you said something a while ago that I was like, man, yeah, honor who your child is.
Yeah.
Honor who they are. And that might mean, sometimes you may have to step back and allow someone else to help. Doesn't make you any less of a parent. But I do some of the work that I do through my foundation, the Natasha Hastings Foundation. There it goes again, Natasha Hastings.
I'm so sorry.
One of the things that I say is the conversations that we're having with these young girls are no different from conversations that parents should or are having with their kids, but sometimes it's got to come from someone different, and that is okay. The importance is that the message is being heard and that someone is speaking their language. So, honor who your kids are, honor the help that they might need, the language that they might need to be spoken to in, and just enjoy the journey. You're going to get lots of sleepless nights, but
those are guaranteed. Those are literally guaranteed.
Since it's guaranteed, just, honor who they are in the process.
I love it. So for all things Natasha Hastings, just search Natasha Hastings and you'll find everything about her. Oh my goodness. You have been so wonderful to talk to. Thank you again for being here.
This was such a pleasure. Such a pleasure to not just talk about track and talk about like things that matter to me. So I enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McMahon, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and connection.